Morning, everybody. John Spielke here for GAI Insights, bringing you the Gen AI news briefing, rating your top news essential, important, or optional, putting thoughts in your head and time in your day. All right, we have some interesting stuff, everything from an infinite game with generative AI, being able to create new characters and so forth, all the way through a new supercomputer in Denmark. All right. Okay, will you give us the first article, please?
Sure, John. Just waiting for my screen to come up. Yes. So the first one that we have for today comes from Nvidia and Denmark. So Denmark has launched a sovereign AI supercomputer with Nvidia.
Fascinating. Adam, what do you think about this?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and good evening. So apologies, I don't know why my camera's not working again, but I'm with you in spirit. Look, I thought this was super interesting. For most Gen AI leaders, like they're not running a country. So the concept of having a sovereign AI at this level certainly isn't going to directly apply. But first of all, a little clarification. When I first heard sovereign AI, I thought it was like that it's acting as its own entity, right? It is sovereign, right? And so it was sort of like, wow, there's going to be like an AI that's governing the country or something. And really, sovereign AI just means that a nation has the capability to produce its own artificial intelligence. And this article, I thought the fact that they go into detail about what that means and what some of the use cases and applications are, I thought potentially could be important in that you could sort of chunk it down and apply it at an enterprise level in terms of owning your own intelligence and the capacity to produce your own system that you can use with your infrastructure, your data, your workforce, your business networks. So in itself, this was probably optional news, although incredible, but potentially important if you look at it by analogy in terms of owning your own intelligence.
All right, so optional on its way to important. What do you think here, Luda, Paul?
I rated it as optional. I think it's super interesting news. I'd love every country to have that type of infrastructure to be able to nurture startups, nurture LLMs specific for the country data. Yeah, so I think this can create a own your own intelligence by country and advance in that sense. So it's important for society, I think, but optional for our leaders, I think, at the moment.
That's interesting. I was leaning more toward important because if you're an AI leader, I think you should be aware that, we saw with GDPR on data, countries asserting their territory. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar thing with AI. But where are you, Paul?
I'm strongly on important. I got a couple of things. One, I'm funneling my inner back pocket stuff for Tim. I think this is a piece of information that every AI leader needs to have and make sure the execs understand as they're thinking about the investment they want to do in premise or not next year. I think secondly is historically we have not thought about countries being that concerned and oriented into what the infrastructure looks like. And this is another example that this technology is automating strategically important areas, and countries are thinking about owning your own intelligence, and obviously companies need to do as well. So I had it as important.
All right, let's go ahead with important then. Sorry, Michael, didn't win the day on this one. Gosh, next.
The next one comes from DHL, and it talks about how DHL supply chain is implementing Gen AI and with the help of Boston Consulting Group.
Yeah, interesting here. Back to our WINS framework. This would be a company that was, let's say, holding a lever, right? Not really in the crucible, but not a big part of their cost base, but interesting, deployed here. What did you think here, Paul?
I thought it was, didn't have a lot of super details. I think Amazon continues to be the bellwether on super detailed case studies showing you exactly what technology they use and everything else. And this feels more like a, consulting with a pretty common case study. So I had this as optional.
Yeah, I came down as optional as well. Adam, you okay with optional?
Yeah, they didn't get into very many details, and they were, as Paul said, they were just kind of describing use cases we're pretty familiar with at this point.
And Luda, you okay? Hit for optional on this one?
Yep.
All right, optional it is, Ankaj. I'm just looking back. Ashish is asking from the previous one, will it be country-specific demands and so forth using AI locally? Ashish, I wouldn't be surprised to find that for lots of reasons. I think the sovereign AI thing is going to be big.
John, I mean, if we jump back to that and the Jesus thing here, I mean, just defense alone.
Yeah.
Take the top 10 defense budgets. That's one. Banking is a whole nother one here, and just a whole sovereignty in general notion, particularly coming out of Europe, is. I mean, don't forget, OpenAI was kicked out of Italy twice last year, or the first year it came out. So,
Yeah.
there are some countries that do really care about this stuff.
I think it makes a lot of sense myself. If I was running a country, I would be really, this would be on the top of my list of things I'd want to grow locally and figure out my strategy on.
And John, like we've talked with a lot of companies, we're not saying this is binary, but you do need to own your own intelligence swim lane.
Yeah, there's a lovely guy by the name of Cesar Hidalgo at MIT who does this fantastic work on the, instead of simple trade, he looks at the complexity of the underlying economy and basically argues that you have to have a fair amount of sophistication within your country to be able to have enough value added to have democracy and things like that, $3,500 a person in terms of GDP. And so it's not, the simplistic kind of Ricardian trade deals where you're just taking one thing and moving it from one country to another. That's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is, do you have a complex enough economy to sustain lots of things locally and globally and compete globally in certain areas? And I think this is one of those things, to your point, Paul. It's not like, do I have AI or not? It's like, what facets do I have? Do I have my own supercomputer? Do I have training? Can I, do I have sovereign data? To Ashish's question, am I using the demand of the government to actually drive primary capability in this area? And it's just fascinating.
Well, and the last thing, I also think it's a great way for the government to work with state institutions at the college level as well, on the talent side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's feeling the same way. Yeah, I think it's the learning part of this is massive. I mean, and the last uptick in learning and the spread of knowledge at this level might be, definitely the scientific revolution, maybe the Catholic Church before that. I mean, just in terms of taking one point of view and putting it out there. Anyway, next, I'm kind of optional on this one. Important on this one.
Okay, the next one comes from Fujitsu and Toyota System Corporation, where they have achieved a 50% reduction in core system update time using GenAI.
All right, Luda, when we get into manufacturing, we usually head toward you. What do you think?
I actually rate it as optional. It's an interesting, massive case where there will be a lot of software, a lot of applications for GenAI. So it's in this case, it's used for operating system upgrade and related software and identifying and removing inconsistencies. That is a humongously labor intensive and quite expertise loaded task, right? So I was in compilers and operating systems for part of my life, deeply in there, to really update that stuff and test it and do all the other applications on top of that and test those is very labor intensive. So I'm not surprised that they picked that as an application. So massive application area, but very limited in how they discussed the details. So it's a great use case, but limited in detail. So I think it's optional.
All right, going optional there. Impressive 50% reduction in work time, I thought. An image that came to mind for me, I don't know if it's right, is generative AI is kind of like fracking for logic. But anyway, the massive change here. What do you think, Paul, Adam? We're going O, we're going I.
I was optional here as well.
Optional.
All right, optional it is. Amkaj, next.
The next one is a research paper which talks about an infinite game of character life simulation, and it comes from, I think, Google DeepMind.
Yes, there are friends here at Google going deep into generating characters and visuals in a dynamic way and can go on forever. What do you think here, Adam?
It's interesting, kind of fun academically, but optional news. I didn't think it was frankly all that innovative or that new a concept for me. They're using two different forms of generative AI. One that can generate game mechanics and narratives, character interactions, which you'd expect from sort of like a text model, and then one that can generate consistent images to go along with the scenes, which would be like a stable diffusion kind of model. So it was just stitching those two together. I was fairly unimpressed, frankly, and gave it an optional.
Interesting. I was heading more toward important here because of the setting is, a game setting, but that general thing, I mean, this could be a battle plan. This could be a marketing, campaign. I just thought you're going from the logic of the agents to the visualization of their expression in a context that you just keep going. I mean, I don't know. I started off on optional. I was leaning toward important. Help us out here, Luda. What do you think?
Optional for me. I wasn't impressed with. I understand that it can be generalized, but the technology they used I'm with Adam. It's kind of stitching various things that are available. So if you were to go at the game plan or what have you, you might actually use maybe more powerful technology. So I'm optional on this one.
Yes, Michael, I think it's both multilingual and multimodal.
Well, I'd say neither. I'd say it's a compound system. It's using two models to build a system.
Yeah. Maybe
All
you can break the tie.
I think Paul's coming in with a technical Barney.
Yes, a big one. That's my wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday, which is in December. I think I want a really big 6-foot Barney.
All right.
She always has a hard time buying for me, Luda. So I need to find something I really
It probably
want.
doesn't exist. We'll have to invent it and make it.
All right. Well, you've successfully trampled on my curiosity. This is optional. Here we go. Next.
The next one is a case study from LlamaIndex around a sales assistant that they have built for Nvidia with Nvidia and IM.
You gotta love Nvidia. They're showing up everywhere, doing country sovereign AI. We got Llama and Nim here working on us. What do you think here on Paul?
I feel like a broken record here. I think we got to continue to remember Nvidia is not a chip company. They're a chip and a vertical integration company here. Sales assistants are a killer app. And if you scroll up on Kaj, look what this is. This is a sales assistant using RAG. Scroll up to the top.
Other direction. There you go. There we go.
And the models they're using are the Llama models, but you can also use Mistral and Perplexity here. So, there's no OpenAI here. There's no Cohere. There's no Anthropic. So this is a really good example of a very sophisticated company using open source on a very, very common use case here. And I think AI leaders need to be aware of this, and this needs to be one of the options they consider, because every company out there with a direct sales force is considering some type of sales assistant this year or next year. So I had it as important.
I agree totally, Paul. And moreover, watch this space. If you scroll down, there's so many cases that they're putting out. How you make this type of application and that type of application, down on Cache. So there are little, So they list the cases that they've put together, and there are a number of them. And it's very important that Nvidia is taking the baton and showing in a very specific way of how you built this. This is a very instructive article. So I think important for me.
Yeah, unlike the DHL. And John, are you reading Michael's challenge on the comments?
What's that? Dare I say essential here? Here. All right. Yeah, I could go essential. And as Lucinda points out, this is LlamaIndex, not Llama. So this is the LangChain competitor.
No, I think up and right, they had Llama as one of the LLMs in the picture way in the top. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So essential. We going essential. Is it sales?
I'll stay important.
I don't know. Everybody's got to sell something.
Yeah, I was in the important camp. I don't know.
We don't have the cost.
Also, to what extent are the Nvidia NIMs available? Do you know? My understanding is they were still building like use cases privately with enterprise, but that wasn't something anyone could be using yet. Maybe I'm mistaken, and that was the part that was already available. But yeah, I'm just.
All right, we'll give it an important, but I'm really feeling essential here. What the heck? Got a market leader.
Well,
Push me over the fence here.
Yeah, the reason it's important rather than essential, my point is that NVIDIA, so there's an HR operations application, there is a fitness application, there is improved sales, Llama Cloud application. So it's a lot of case studies that I'm pointing the AI leader to, with detail of how do you put it together with free tools somewhat. So I think it's important, but not yet essential.
All right, but I'm taking the votes. Oh, sorry.
It's not overwhelmingly important.
All right, but I'm going to take the votes of Michael and Lucinda as part of the thing. So that would be 3-3. That makes me the vice president. I'm going to essentially go in a very democratic way, and that is one of the vice presidential powers in the Constitution.
All right.
John, as this audience continues to grow, and I really appreciate all feedback from Lucinda and Michael and Ashish and other here, we got to get like an online poll. I mean, we could just
something like that, yeah.
Have the audience vote quickly and have it annotated. So,
as Vladimir Putin said to Donald Trump, and he remembered this, it's not how the votes are cast, it's who counts the votes. All right, next. Oh, gosh, you're going to do essential on this guy.
The last one that we have for today comes from Deloitte, and it talks about 4 futures of Gen AI in the enterprise.
Oh my God, I used to do stuff like this for a living. We do scenarios in car industries and all kinds of stuff. What did you think here, Luda? I thought it was kind of cool, but.
Yeah, I rated it as important. So yeah, here, Ankash, that's great. So they took a look at, so this is coming from Deloitte, right? They took a look at a whole bunch of surveys and put together 4 scenarios for an AI leader to look at, right? So you see here 2x2 by performance and growth, right? Scenarios go from, high cost, growth by high cost, but not much performance. All systems go when this is all going very well, or the bubble bursts in the corner on the left. So the reason I rated it is important, and then they go through the scenarios and talk about how do you want to prepare for that if you think what you're doing is might be within the scope of that scenario. So I think it's a fourth quarter of 24. Lots has happened in AI and applications. So it's an assessment time. And that provides a tremendous framework with a lot of good pointers to surveys and the like, to think about what you have achieved, what you're thinking of 25, how to position it for the board and the like. So I felt that this is an important reflection article.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting in terms of, in these things, that one of the things I think that's most important is what are the dimensions that they do. And they unequal growth, shared growth, achieving performance objectives, failing to meet performance objectives. Those aren't bad, I think, as things to highlight. And I'm sure they had a lot more aggressive thoughts that they couldn't get through their risk and quality people. But I was going to give it this important as well. Paul, Adam, disabuse us of this.
I don't have a strong opinion, John. I mean, I do. I mean, it's November 1st this week. Companies are clearly getting into budget mode. I mean, I think it's so clear. We're doing so much work on the buyer's guide right now. And last year was the year of the pilots. This year was like a year of alignment and budget ownership. And next year is a year of the going live into production. So I think this is a reasonable framework to start thinking about that. And I think the companies really need to calibrate what their investment level is. Do they need to double or not next year is an important question.
All right. Adam, you okay with important?
Not really, but I'll defer to the rest of you.
Why?
I don't know, like the guidance they give, like this is super generalized. Like it could have nothing to do with AI. Using strategic foresight, scenario planning, stakeholder analysis, impact assessment. They're not really they're just doing a bunch of basic stuff that already exists and just wrapping the word Gen AI around it.
This is true.
They're talking about what things are going to be like in 3 years when they have no idea what it's going to be like in 3 years. It just seemed highly speculative. And at the bottom where they ask you what's next and how to use these scenarios, they just say like, well, think about what'll happen if these 4 things happen. I'm like, well, yeah, thanks. That's super helpful. Like I just couldn't take anything useful away from it, but that's why I sat here quietly and just let you all go on about how helpful this is. And Q4 is we're all planning our budget for next year, and yeah.
I might take a corner on this one. Yeah, I was a bit sensitive. I'm working with the Ergo group on a scenario thing, and I like my scenarios better, so I didn't want to kind of dump on this because of that. The scenario dimensions that we came up with were who's going to get the value. Is the company going to get the value, or is the cloud provider going to get the value? Which is a market power question. And the other dimension was, is the cluster of supply going to stay largely concentrated in Silicon Valley or be more hub and spoke around the world? Because that has implications for, how you think about your development and so forth. So I like mine better, so I'd give this an optional, but
so Adam, let me just, I hear you, and you're right. It's a little light on the specific advice, right? But from where I was coming from, it's almost like doesn't matter. You're not looking at this for specific advice. It's a reflection article, right? So you need to put it in perspective where you think in your industry this AI wave is going and where the impact is, right? And then you look at what you're doing, where you're focused, what have you achieved, and putting the 25 in from that perspective. So some framework is necessary to really put it together. So that's how I was looking at it. That's why I thought it has value in that sense.
But I heard
of all the things you could put on 2 axes for possible futures of generative AI, these aren't the 2 things I'd use as my axes. I guess that's all.
Okay. Yeah. No, I hear you.
We have to reward the emerging snark here too. I mean, he held back from the truth.
Look at the support I have from our people in the crowd here. Mike Novak +1 Adam, Lucinda
okay,
Powell.
well, I mean, I can.
Tim +1 Adam.
Here we go. You were one click away from the engineers. Hey, what the spin doctor pablum garbage from the consultants. So. But it was underneath your commentary. I could feel it. All right. So we're going optional with this one.
Optional.
Well argued. Mobilized crowd.
Optional. Good.
The mob is at the gates. We cannot go against it. All right. All right, Akash, you give us the big tote.
Yes, John. Coming right up.
All right. Here we are. All right, so we have one essential today in terms of sales assistant, one important and the rest optional. We have Denmark, King of Denmark. Maybe those 2 things will go together. Sales assistant for Denmark. Who knows? Any announcements or anything, folks? All right. We start off the week.
Lab in the morning.
Learning lab tonight, right? In the morning tomorrow for you, Adam?
Oh, sorry, my morning. Yes. Learning lab tonight.
Learning lab tonight. We're going to 7:30 Eastern time tonight for 1 hour. We're going to have a learning lab going through the state of AI report that we started on last week. Should be good, and hope to see you there. And thanks everybody for coming. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for comments, guys.